So this is water. Been living it for 21 years now, since I graduated myself. I'm talking about David Foster Wallace's graduation speech in 2005, I think it was, where he says, everyone worships. So it made me think, what do I worship? Well, he says you should worship one of the religions, unless you want to worship something else that eats you alive, like wisdom or wealth and power. These lesser things. Or beauty, he says, but then it was referring to your own beauty. But, he didn't mention sexualism, which is the worship of beauty, in a sense. Of course, it's the political fight against unfair and unjust sex laws, but it's also the worship of female beauty. Now, he says if you worship your own beauty, of course, it's gonna go away and you're gonna feel ugly and old. But that doesn't have to happen if you worship young female beauty, because it is that peak experience that you worship, and it's still there, and it was eternally the best experience a man can ever have. And you might be able to have it even though you are older yourself. So, overall, I agree with the message of This Is Water. But there are other things to worship than the traditional religions. Plus, you have to realize that the traditional religions weren't necessarily so hostile to sexualist ideals anyway. So I lived in the water for 21 years, but I didn't really enter the workforce, right? So I didn't experience the drudgery that David Foster Wallace also talks about. So overall, it's a pretty pessimistic message. And didn't he end up committing suicide himself too? You can understand the sort of depression he's talking about there, and you have to understand that it is a depression, that negative outlook on life, unless you're worshiping this God or whatever, that he is talking about there. So yeah, of course, you don't want to be at the bottom of that workforce if you can help it. One way to help it is to be a loser too. You don't necessarily have to be an overachiever. You can be an underachiever and also not be part of that workforce. But it's a good speech. Makes me wanna do a graduation speech myself this year. So I'll get to work on that. This is water, said David Foster Wallace in his graduation speech. I've been living it for 21 years now. I graduated in 2002 for the first time. as a traditional student, and then I kept on studying later too. But anyway, I can't really relate because I'm not depressed like David Foster Wallace. I don't think it's so dreary to be an adult. Except I'm sure I would be a lot more depressed if I had to work hard that whole time, which luckily I managed to avoid by being a slacker and living very frugally. And then I didn't try to be on welfare, but I've been on that as well for a number of years. So you don't necessarily have to be an overachiever to avoid that. You can be an underachiever too, at least if you live in a good welfare system. Well, David Foster Wallace says, everyone worships. Made me think, what do I worship? And I'll tell you, I worship beauty, but I don't worship my own beauty. I know that phase has faded. I'm old, getting old and ugly. But if you worship female beauty, peak female beauty, that is eternal. Those are the peak experiences a man can have. And you can have some of that into your older age, at least middle age. Where I am now, it's not hopeless. And I do believe that is something worth worshipping more than the gods, the traditional religions that David Foster Wallace says you should worship, unless you want to worship something that eats you alive. Now, the examples that he's using there, that may be correct. It is correct. If you worship money, you'll always feel poor, always need more and more and more. If you worship knowledge, you will feel stupid. If you worship status, you will always feel like you can't rise high enough. But it's not like that with sex and with female beauty, with the peak experiences, because those are perfect, they are consummate. I really sincerely do feel that the young women I've been with, those experiences are perfect, consummate, and they will make me smile and die happy already, even if I can't even achieve more of them, because it was so wonderful. And if you don't see that and you can't feel that for yourself, and you need to resort to these religions that you need to worship just so you won't be eaten alive by this treadmill of status and money and all that, well, then I would call you depressed. Which David Foster Wallace legitimately was. But if that is a sort of mainstream message, then the mainstream message is wrong. It's just sick. Because I know that you don't need to worship these traditional religions as such. Maybe you can do both, but you certainly can be happy and have the peak, most wondrous experiences. Just worship female beauty. You don't need a god or to think that you need to sort of locate your value in some kind of something outside of you, or an afterlife or something like that, or a spiritual being or think you're part of an eternal spiritual being or something. Because sexualism, I mean the self-help branch of sexualism, I'm not just talking about the political anti-sex law part that I'm really into also, of course, but the spiritual side of sexualism, sex positivity, that is self-sufficient. It really does make me happy. Okay, here's a little addendum. Because, of course, you don't only worship beauty. There is also such a thing as love, which can endure after beauty fades. And the natural result of worshipping beauty is to have kids. And once that happens, your priorities change and you find meaning in more than just sex. And more than romantic love. But what I've said previously here still remains pretty true as far as it goes. So, I'm glad I said it. This was my reaction to This Is Water by David Foster Wallace.